So you need to extend your shaft. Yes, we all do, I know. But this is for our golf shaft. Stay tuned and we'll talk about different ways of extending a golf shaft. Welcome back to the McGolf Shop. Jim McCleary here. This is McGolf Channel where we talk about golf club repairs, golf club reviews, and golf club fittings, all so your scores can go low. If you would, like, subscribe, hit all those buttons that goes across the bottom so that we can increase our subscribership. Okay, so extending a shaft. Yes, I know I just couldn't let that one go. Haha. All right. So why would we extend a golf shaft? It's for club length, right? For me, the length of the golf club is paramount, quite possibly the single most parameter that you need for a golf club. Why is that? Because the golf club length is equal to consistency. So regardless of the weight, regardless of all that other stuff, if you don't have the right length of a golf club, it's really hard for you to be consistent. Now keep in mind, it's like when you're in the batter's box and you can't bring the bat around, and what's the coach tell you to do? Normally it's choke up. And when you go to choke up, it allows you to bring the bat around to square in order to hit the ball better. Same thing in the world of golf, right? Everybody's built a little differently. They take their address a little bit differently, and their arm length is a little bit different. And all these things combine in order to find the right length for you. Now, under the bell curve, the standard length is pretty much it. But what I'm finding, anywhere from a half inch under to half inch over will capture 95% of the people that are out there. But you still have some of the unusuals that may be an inch shorter or an inch longer. And those are build qualities that we're not talking about right now. So let's find out. So we have a set of vise irons. Hold on. Brand new vise irons. And this golfer, who's from Kentucky, bought them. He said he bought them in Germany, or bought them from Germany. I'm not sure what that's all about. Anyway, Vice Golf. All right, Vice Golf. There we go. All right, look at that. It's got a blade-like design. When I first saw it, you know, it's got the word forged on it and the word Vice. It's got a rounded forward leading edge on it, and it appears to be, well, what's it say in the back here? German engineering. Maybe that's the reason why he says he got it from Germany. Anyway, we look at it and it looks like a really, really, really big blade. And when you look at it, there's a giveaway. There's a little dot on the end there. And that little dot is to say that there's a hole that's maybe a hollow body that's in there. I haven't looked up the specifics. It made a bit of a splash. Vice did. You know, obviously they got the golf ball. But that's about it. So anyway, this has, when I'm looking at it, it is a blade-like club with what I would say is a medium offset, and it has a killed leading edge on it, and it is a much larger component, a much larger face than what your standard blade is to make these a little bit easier to hit. I'm assuming that the inside of this area right here is hollow, since there's the hole in there, in order to do swing weighting or put the you know, some kind of goo in there to make it sound better. They are a stronger loft, as I found out, and not a bad look. Unfortunately, I only see a right-handed. So, hey, it is what it is. Turns out, my golfer buddy from Kentucky is tall, and he needs the clubs to be extended. Well, he ordered them like he wanted them, but they didn't come like that. So we did a fitting just to ensure lie angles and length and that kind of stuff to make sure he got what he wanted. Turns out he was pretty doggone close. All right, the shafts are within the weight category and the flex that I'd like to see him in. I'd like to see a different profile, but that's neither here nor there. He bought them brand new. So we are going to try and get him in into his golf clubs with as least impact as possible. So We've already blown off the grips, and we did it the old school way with the grip solvent and the air and the gun. So, you know, we tried to take those off, and they go, well, why didn't you use air? Well, it wouldn't have worked. I would have blown them up because there was several layers of tape underneath to make the grip bigger, and it was very, very sticky as it was brand new. And so the best way to get it would have been with the needle gun and the solvent. All right, so now we're going to extend them. So let's talk about extensions. As there are two different kinds of shafts, steel and graphite, there are two different kinds of extensions, steel, and graphite. Okay. All right, we're going to start with graphite first. Graphite comes in, they call them graphite, they're actually made out of nylon. And they're nylon pieces that look like this. Now, they used to look like, I'll give you another one. They used to look like the one on, I want to say, the left-hand side of this. You see how they have kind of a diamond pattern, where this one is straight up and down. This one's the diamond pattern. So what this came in was a regular and an oversized. And the regular and oversized really took care of a lot of the different sizes. And what you would do is, if it's too big, you would just sand this down to fit. All right, well, they took that to another level, and this is the same thing, and this is a 600 size, and that you would sand this piece down in order to fit much smaller sizes. Now, what they did to try and help the average golfer or the average builder, you see those two lines right here? Right? Those are half-inch. Are they half-inch? Yeah, they're half-inch increments, so if you had to go for a half-inch real quick or an inch real quick, you could just trim it off without having to measure it. I would still measure it because I don't trust any of this stuff. Not that it's bad, I just don't trust any of that stuff. And so this one says regular on it, which would lead me to believe that there's probably one out there for an oversized. Now, there are other graphite extensions out there. There's a premium one that Golfworks sells, and it covers a myriad of butt interior diameters. All right, interior diameters. And it is a plethora, and it goes from, and it's color coded, and they go in 10th sizes, all the way from like a 4.40 something all the way up to a 600. All right, so if you, in graphite, it's very, very important to know the inside diameter of that so you can pick the correct one. Okay. So, and they're fairly inexpensive. All these things, they run about $3 a piece. Okay. Now, the graphite or the nylon, they run about $3, and you get one. If we move to the steel, it costs you about $3, but you get two. All right, there's an extension on here, and an extension on here. Now, what are we talking about? We're going to go back a little bit. If you notice, this goes into the butt of the shaft pretty deep, a little bit further so. And that's because steel's a little bit tougher, right? So you want a little bit more insertion. And you want to make sure you get it all the way down, and you want to make sure that it doesn't wobble a lot. When it wobbles a lot, it can go back and forth and either do one of two things. It will work its way out, or it will act like a saw and cut, and the back end of that shaft will break. So you want to make sure you have a snug fit, and you have the right glue on there, and make sure you seat the club. All right, for steel. All right, for steel, this is a longer piece. Let's see what it looks like. So this is a 12-inch piece, and what you do is, and of course this is a 2-inch insertion. Normally you would just cut it down the middle and put them in, now you got two. Now these come in a fixed number of sizes from 560, 580, 600, and 620. Okay, and those are meant to fit tight, or good enough to be tight. Not you got to force it in tight, but where it gets in there and you don't have this going on, but maybe a little bit of that. All right, so that's what we're getting ready to do. So we're gonna put in these steel extenders. We've measured the inside. We've got the right ones. These are 600s to go in the back of the True Tempers. And it's a proprietary Vice golf shaft, but it says it's from True Temper. So, and True Temper likes 600 for a lot of their stuff, which makes me think it's some kind of offset of a dynamic gold. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over the bench. We're going to talk about how we are going to prep, how we're going to glue, and then we're going to let them set and we're going to cut them. And then the cutting, there's a couple of methods that we're going to use for cutting, so we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so the first thing in order to be able to prep these things is we got to cut the shafts or the extenders in half. It gives me about 2.5 inches, maybe, well, actually probably closer to 4 or 5 inches. Now, we got to talk about the extension part. In order for this thing to truly work, you think, well, if I can get one that's a foot long, I'll just cut off that 2 inch and I can extend these things 10 inches. No. All right, there's only just so much stress that this thing can take while it's sitting in the shaft. Well, it's only going to go into the shaft, right? So there it is. And if you get way out here, all this movement is being focused down into there. So my rule of thumb is between 1 inch to 1.5 inches is my maximum I'll extend anything, because I don't want it to come back for me to repair again. Now, for you guys that are doing it at home and you want to give it a try, hey, be my guest. However, I would suggest no more than 1 inch and maybe 1.5 inches. Now, I've done putters much longer, maybe 3 inches long, but that is because the putter doesn't see that kind of stress. All right, and that's what we can do. Now, the last thing, when we talked about nylon or graphite versus steel, could you put a nylon one in here? Yes. For me, it's all about weight distribution. The nylon ones are significantly lighter, so you don't want it to feel like you just counterweighted your golf shaft in a graphite, and the steel is very much like a steel. Now, they do make aluminum ones. I'm just not a fan of them. I don't think the quality is good, and steel for steel, when you have like metals, you just remove a lot of problems. All right, so we have 2 choices here. If you were going to go and you needed to do it very quick, then I would use the 810 and I would do just 1 or 2 and off we go, and we'd be churning them out within a few minutes. However, I have a lot, so I'm going to use the 420, which has a much longer cure time and allows me to work it over a little bit more. And we're going to put a little bit of quick center on here. That helps take up any of the added space that may or may not be there. And we get going here for a minute. Alright, so we got it nice and stirred up. The reason why we stir it up for at least me for 60 seconds is I like it to get rid of all the air bubbles. They're real big about air bubbles, don't let it, and that just shows that you've got it all mixed up. Alright, so we're going to roll this a nice light coating about halfway up the extension, and you do is you spin it around, working it in. And you see where it kind of moves up. Get all that in there. And there we go. You want to wipe off your excess, because the last thing you want to be doing is chasing glue boogers. And then you can just set it up there to dry. Alrighty, let's do a couple more. Alrighty. Again, about halfway up. Now, this takes a little bit more glue than just your average gluing of a golf shaft. That's the reason why I put so much on there. Alright, let's do this again. So we get up a little bit more glue on here. Obviously, it's a little bit more than when you're gluing a regular golf shaft in because the diameters are bigger. Could be a whole lot of other stuff. A little bit more. But that's the reason why I put more glue out there than I normally would. Alright. Get rid of that, and off we go. So it's basically just gluing it, and I'm going to be working this pretty quick. in order to make sure my glue, I get to use all my glue, because, well, epoxy is not cheap anymore. Alright, so a couple other things when we talk about extending a golf shaft. When you saw me cutting them, I actually ended up prepping them as well. And I prep them on my belt sander, and you can do that with regular sanding. You could put sandpaper in your hand and do it that way. You could shoe shine it with some sandpaper, but you got to rough up the surface, and you've got to clean out the end of the golf shaft in order to remove any of the rust, because it's a steel shaft that's not protected, in order for the glue to bind correctly. Now, you saw me flip it over here, and I do flip it over because there are slag from the cutting, and I just don't want to cut my fingers or my hands, because you're grabbing this thing, and if you really want to manipulate it, there's a real opportunity for it to get into the fat of your hand and cut yourself. And so what I do is I just remove that problem altogether, and we get rid of it. Now, from a graphite perspective, it's a one, each one gets individually fit. You do your sanding, you fit it in. You do your sanding, you get it in there. Because there's just so much fluctuation in there, you want to do each fit individually. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we're going to let these things dry, and then we're going to cut them. Now, there's a couple of methods to cut them. Number one, and probably used at you got this in your house, is a tubing cutter. Okay, you can use a tubing cutter if you don't have like an abrasive wheel, like an angle grinder or something like that, that you can put a cutting blade on. But you can use one of these. This is much cleaner in a lot of cases, but what it does is it tends to turn the edges of the end of the shaft in, and then you got to do a little bit of sanding to clean it up. But it does get done. Another way is a Dremel. You can use a Dremel it has a cutting wheel on it. Get you a few, because this will go through quite a few of them. It is not as sturdy as, say, your grinding wheel or your cutting wheel that you would have on your block. And then finally, what we have is what I use. I use an angle grinder with a cutting blade on it, and it makes short work of that stuff. So if you're doing it for more than just a hobby, get the tool that saves you the time. If you're doing it because you enjoy the idea of doing it, then the tubing cutter is more than okay. All right, and then just a little bit of handwork, and it's all said and done. So once we get those done, we're going to resize the grips and give it back to the golfer, and hopefully he enjoys these Vice golf clubs a lot more now that they're the right length. So again, extending the shaft, it is a simple task, but you got to know why you're doing it, what tools to use for doing it, and which ones are proper, and how far you want to go. If you want to know more about this kind of stuff, we have live streams every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We talk about this same stuff. You can ask me questions directly. It is actually a very, very good time. I suggest that you do it. And as always, let's see your scores go low.